All right. Good afternoon. I'm sure there may be some other people jumping in here. It is 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, so we're going to get started with the People First Leadership Weekly webinar. And if you don't catch it live, I know a lot of people catch it on the replay, so I will be sending that out later this afternoon, probably after my eighth grader's orientation at school today. So, yep, I have an eighth grader. The youngest one is an eighth grader. That makes me feel old. But anyways, speaking of toxic culture, this week's topic is toxic high performers and why you cannot let them ruin your culture. I'm going to give you a personal story about this one, and I think this is really important. One of the biggest things when you're dealing with toxic high performers is one, try not to hire them if you can. Easier said than done. I understand that. That's a really hard thing to do, is weeding them out during the hiring process. But if you can do so, if you can get some little grains of insight into who they are, you want to get rid of that or don't hire that in the first place. Really good example, my wife's medical practice that she works at, they hire for culture and fit over skills. Now, typically when you're hiring somebody, the skills is the first thing that you're looking at because you need X, Y, and Z done at your business. And so you're hiring so somebody can do X, Y, and Z. But my wife's company, they hire for fit and culture primarily over skill set because they figure, everybody kind of has the right skills when you're in a medical profession. So they know that they're dealing with people who know what they're doing a little bit, but they can teach those skills to you. They can't teach fit, and it's hard to teach culture. So their hiring practice is they do a screener interview, and then they have an on-site in-person interview. And then if those two things go well, there's a third section of this interview. And the third section is a 2 to 3 hour job shadow, where they come back on another day and they just literally shadow somebody in the department that they're going to be working in for 2 to 3 hours. And then they just watch the interactions. And then at the end of the day, after the person is gone from the interview, at the end of the workday, they all kind of get together and say, okay, what did you think of Todd? How did Todd fit in? Did Todd make the jokes that we make? Did Todd laugh at the jokes that we made? Did Todd fit in well? Did Todd understand? Was Todd respectful? And they just ask all those questions. And then it's kind of a group think decision like, hey, we really like them. They fit really well. They didn't know how to do X, Y, and Z, but we can teach that. That's okay. The fit was really good. They matched our mission, our vision, our culture. That's really good. That's a great example of how to do that. Now, is it time consuming on the front end because there's like 3 interviews? Yes. But that's how they hire. Now, they haven't done that 2 different times. And both times, those people have had to leave or been asked to leave. So maybe you make a bigger time investment on the front end of the hiring process, but it sure pays dividends on the back end because then you don't have to deal with drama. No, they're always going to have some drama as a leader, but you don't have to deal with as much drama, and you can kind of just get things rolling as you need to. So toxic behavior can spread quickly and it can degrade morale amongst your team. I was working with another client currently, and they had this exact scenario going on. There was one person whose skill set was exceptional, absolutely exceptional. They were a high performer, like we're talking about. But their attitude and their mindset was very negative and very poor. And that started to bleed into other people. And to the point where the CEO at one point had to say, I don't know what's going on here, but you all are acting very, very differently, and we need to fix this. Now, that is obviously Todd's version of that, but it really started to affect the other people within the department and outside of the department as well. And so that had to get dealt with. That's kind of when I came in and started working with this business. So you can't let it spread. Now, what do you do after it spreads? Well, then you start having a culture shift. And if you're a leader who's built a business, built a company, leading an organization, your climate and your culture is paramount. And it's really important that you keep that going in the right direction, because that's why you're doing the thing, right? That's why you're in the business that you're in. That's why you're in the position that you're in. Whatever it is, that's why you're there. So if that climate and culture starts to shift, man, that's horrible. I have a friend who worked at a company far longer than he should have, but he was there for good reason. And I even asked them about this one time. I was like, you could be making, man, 20, 30, probably even 40% more money annually if you would just go to a different company and do the exact same job. Why are you still at this job? And he said, Todd, they took a chance on me when I was young and I was fresh and I didn't really know what I was doing. Their company culture is second to none. Like, I have never worked at a place where I feel more valued, more taken care of, more respected. And it's just amazing. It is literally like a second family. And he's like, and I know I'm not going to get that anywhere else. Then I guess a few years ago, the company was bought out and then culture shifted. And then he was like, yeah, now it's time to go. And then he went to another company that's doing really well and he's making more money. But he stayed at the same company, I want to say for almost a decade, when he could have been making far more money someplace else. But he was loved, he was taken care of, he was respected, and that meant a lot to him. We have also, I'm sure anybody listening to this can agree with this, is we have been places where maybe we have been making good money, but it has been so toxic that we've left, your host included. I left a job where I had people say, Todd, you should not leave this job. You can coast in this job until retirement and be taken care of. And I'm like, yes, but it is hell. It is hellacious to work here every day. I'm nauseous when I come into the building. It's just not a good culture. So I left. And it was the best thing that I could have done. And I think we can all relate to that in some way, shape, or form. So when you have people who disrupt your culture, that also starts to breed mistrust, and you don't have the same levels of collaboration that you would typically have, because now, man, yeah, maybe this person's a really high performer and they're doing a fantastic job, but I know they're talking about Susie over there. And if they're talking about Susie, well, then they're probably going to talk about Todd. And if they're going to talk about Todd, they're probably going to talk about Jacob. And yeah, and it just makes things feel crunchy and grungy, and just think of whatever ew word that you like. That's how things start to feel. So let me ask you a question. When is productivity worth the price of a toxic performer, and when is it not worth the price of a toxic performer? I am going to suggest to you that it is never worth the price of a toxic performer unless you are solely motivated by money. And if that is what you're motivated by and that is your end result, and I'm not knocking that. There are some people who say, I don't care about relationships. I don't care about who I step on. I just want to make X amount of dollars and attain this position in life. Okay. I disagree with how you're doing that, sure. But if that's who you are, thanks for being honest with us. And thanks for being honest with yourself. And if the dollar amount is what you want to do, then fine, go for it. I think many of you are familiar with the movie The Wolf of Wall Street. This was starring Leonardo DiCaprio. I've not seen the movie, but I'm kind of familiar with the story because I saw the 60 Minutes episode on it. I think it was 60 Minutes or Dateline, whatever. And there was this guy who was really just solely motivated by money. And what did he do? He broke laws. He did things that were unethical, but hey, he was making a lot of money. And in the end, the real life story, it all came crashing down. So I think you have to ask yourself, what motivates you? Is it the climate and the culture, like my friend who stayed at the company for 10 years, even though he could have been making more money? The climate and culture was so great that he stayed? Or do you not really care about climate and culture because you want to make the money? I would suggest to you that wanting to make only the money and not caring about the climate and culture is going to be detrimental to you in the long run, even if that's the only thing that you care about. So we're going to talk about how we can keep good climate and culture. Now, short-term gains are often going to cost your long-term mental health. Yes, you may have a high performer who is knocking it out of the park, but if they're toxic, and toxic can be a lot of different things. Toxic can just be in their attitude. Toxic can be in their ethics and how they do the job. Toxic can just be in maybe they're good with everybody, but 2 or 3 people. Well, then those 2 or 3 people are going to feel that toxicity, and then it's going to start to spread because those 2 and 3 people also have relationships with who? Everybody else, right? So that toxicity has got to be treated kind of like a cancer. It has to be isolated and, in my opinion, either fixed or removed. Now, both can happen. Fixing is actually harder than removing it because removing it, yep, you just kind of slash it, cut it, get it out of there, and then you can heal and move on and start to move on towards a better day. But if you're going to try to fix the toxicity in a person, that's going to be a lot longer haul, and you're going to have to invest a lot more time and energy into that person. So, your results from working with this toxic person may mean that your values are compromised. Not that you necessarily are compromising your values, but you are letting things slide. Perfect example is you've worked a long day. You've come home. You told your son to clean his room, and he didn't clean his room. Now you're tired, you're hungry, you're ready for bed, and you know if you approach your son about cleaning his room, it's going to be a battle. And you just don't want the battle. You don't want the battle. You're tired, you're hungry, had a long day. You know what? I'm just going to go to bed and I'm not going to talk to my son about his room and cleaning his room. What did you just do? You compromised your values. You had a standard that was set. The standard was not met. And instead of holding the person accountable to that standard, you lowered your standard. You compromised your values. And in business, I see that happen frequently. Yes, things are going really well, but they're going well in a toxic way. Or, hey, the money's coming in, but I don't like how this person's doing the job. They're not doing the way that we want to promote our reputation, promote our company. But man, they're doing good. So maybe I just won't say anything about it. Maybe I'll just let it slide. Famous last words. I say that famous last words because it always comes back to bite you in the you know what. Don't ever just let something slide. If you think about it once, maybe it's just a thought. If you think about it twice, you probably need to say or do something about it. And that is advice that I received like 15, 20 years ago that I still hold today. Somebody told me that and they said, Todd, if you think about something once, maybe it's just something to think about. If you think about it twice, then that means it's not sitting well with you and you probably need to either say or do something. And I take that advice with me every single day. How do you hold high performers accountable to values and not just results? Because sometimes high performers get the job done and they might be money driven, they might be prestige driven, they might be promotion driven, they might be position driven, whatever it is. But how do you hold them to an intrinsic value that you have set, like your mission, your vision, for your company, and just doing things the right way? I have a friend who's in business, and yes, he cares about making money. That's why we're in business. That's why we do leadership. That's why we lead people, because we want to make money and we want to make a lot of it. If we can, that'd be great. But he also is 100% we're going to do things the right way. And I have seen him take a financial hit personally to ensure that things are done the right way by the name of the company, if that makes sense. I don't want to use the name because I don't have his permission to say that out loud. But he will take a financial hit, redo something that wasn't done well by his employees, or if something didn't turn out right, he will take the financial hit or the hit of time to make sure that he delivers the product the right way to his client and does things the right way. He's even done that for me. Something that he worked on for me one time. He's like, Todd, you know what? Yes, it's fixed, but it's not right. So I'm going to make sure that I do this for you the correct way, and I'm not going to charge you anything for it. It just needs to be done the right way. Okay, cool. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And what has that earned? My loyalty. Yes, he's my friend, but Like I have friends who do bad jobs at things. I don't patronize their businesses, you know? So it's like, this guy really earned my loyalty because he didn't have to be honest with me, but and when the product was delivered to me, it was done right, quote unquote, right, but it wasn't right to his standard and it could have been better. And so he took the hit of time and made it perfect. And I appreciated that for him. So when you have these high performers, you have to hold them to a standard. And maybe that standard is an ethical standard, or maybe it's let's go with that first. Let's say you have an ethical standard and you're like, hey, I don't want you to push this product on these people because I know that they don't like that. Yes, we could sell it to them and yes, they could buy it, but it's not the right product for them. So I don't want you to push that. And then let's say this high performer pushes it anyways because he's going to get a good commission on it, or he's going to make more money on it, or whatever it is. What do you do? This is where we get into our leadership mindset. We have to, as leaders, not be afraid of our people. I see this in leadership. I see this in business. I see this in churches. I see this in organizations. I see this in parenting, where the leader is afraid of their kids, of their client, of fill in the blank with whatever business or organization that you're in. They are afraid of them and they don't want to rock the boat, or they don't want to say the thing. You absolutely cannot be of that mindset. I was working with a client who contracted with me for just a one-off and wanted to talk about mindset of kind of this exact same thing. They had an employee who was a high performer, but they were kind of toxic. And I was like, well, let's talk about your mindset. What type of person are you? And this person was, well, I'm kind of timid. I'm an introvert. I'm a little bit shy, but I know the business inside and out. Okay, great. I said, if I were to come into your business and kind of be, Todd Hendricks, the extra personality guy that I can be sometimes, would that kind of bowl you over and bulldoze you a little bit? And she said, yeah, it would. I said, would you be able to kind of like maybe hold a line and push back and kind of put me in my place? No, I'm not very good at that. I'm not very good at that at all. Okay. I said, well, we need to find that spot for you. I said, what if I cut in line in front of you at the grocery store? Oh, no, I wouldn't say anything. Okay. What if I cut you off in traffic? Would you honk at me? Oh, no, I wouldn't honk at you at all. I said, what if your daughter was playing in the front yard and you were sitting on the porch and I was a stranger and I walked up to the fence and I was like, hey, little girl, come here. Let me give you some candy. And I was creepy about it. She was like, I would come off that porch in a minute. And I was like, that right there, that mama bear mindset, that thought process where you're like, oh, no, you didn't. That's where we have to be with our employees. Now, we don't have to have an attitude about it. We don't have to be angry. We don't have to be aggressive, but we have to be able to think and say just about anything to our direct reports and the people who are working for us. So what does that look like? I'll use myself as an example. Todd didn't do something right. So I'm walking down the hallway and I see Todd coming out of the break room. And I'm thinking about this not once, twice, or three times, but like all day long. And so I say, hey, Todd, when I saw you do this and this and this, I don't think that was correct. Can we talk about that a little bit later? You don't have to have the conversation immediately, but just so they know, oh, this isn't going the way that they want it to go, and we're going to have a conversation about it. That's going to then put a speed bump in their mind about what they did. That's also going to give me a time to front load some information for myself and maybe for Todd. Always, 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 you have to be, I'm gonna use a colloquialism. You have to be in their junk. And this is, I'm going back to my college days. Well, I'm going to be in your junk, man. Yep, I'm going to be in your junk. That's what we need to do. And you have to be able to be in your direct reports junk. You just have to say, hey, look, man, I know you're handling this, but I'm going to get in this because this isn't going the right way and we need it to go the right way. So we're just going to have a conversation about it. Okay. Maybe it's messy. Maybe it sounds something like that. Maybe it can be ultra professional. And you can say, hey, Todd, we're going to have a meeting on Thursday. This is part of our weekly one-on-one meetings. That thing that you did there that wasn't done quite correctly. So we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to give you some positive feedback. I'm going to give you some adjusting feedback about that. But we'll talk about that on Thursday. Okay. I'll see you then. Thanks. Have a great day. Maybe it's super professional like that. Maybe it's part of a documentation that you need to do with them or whatever. You have to use coaching when you're talking to these people. You cannot be afraid. You cannot ask them for permission to lead them. You have to lead them, and they have to either get on board or leave. And I hate to say it that way, but sometimes you have a toxic person, maybe a high performer, but they are affecting the rest of the team. Maybe they just need to go. And I've seen this multiple times recently. I want to say I've seen this 2 different times in the past 3 months where there has been a person, part of a business, part of a corporation, where they've been toxic. They've been doing a good job, but they are just not the right fit. It is time for them to go, and they need to go. And once they're gone, like the flowers and the daisies start growing again. Everything is better. The sun comes out, you see rainbows in the sky, whatever it is, everything goes better once that person leaves. Now, we can talk about hiring and firing at a later date, but both times in both scenarios that I'm thinking of, once the person was gone, it was kind of a shock. But then about 2 weeks into their departure, it was like, wow, we had no idea how this was affecting the rest of the team. And now the rest of the team is really firing on all cylinders because this one person is gone. Wow, we let that go too long. And I know, man, I'm thinking of people in my head, and I'm sure you're thinking of people in your head. I'm thinking of 3 different leaders, 3 completely separate businesses right now where I've had that conversation with them all in the past 12 months. We let this go too long. We should have done something about this sooner. But why didn't we? Why didn't we do something sooner? Because it's hard, it's messy, and we have to be involved, and it takes our time. Just like when our son didn't clean their room, but we're tired and we had a long day. I don't want to deal with it. So I'm going to go back to something that I've said for years and years. Do the hard thing. In business, in relationships, in leadership, do the hard thing because it will make you stronger. Just like lifting weights is hard, it will make you stronger on the backside of it. You'll be better for it, and so will your business and your company. So yes, there are high performers, but you cannot let them override your company culture if you've got a good company culture. Now, maybe that's where you're at. Maybe you have a bunch of high performers and your company culture is garbage. Unfortunately, that happens. That happens frequently. So then what do? Now you're the lone leader and you've got this whole group of people who are toxic. They're doing really well, but they're toxic. Maybe that's where you put a big pause in the company right there. And you're like, okay, we need to do something totally different. That's when you call in a Todd Hendricks. You call in a Patrick Lencioni or a Tony Robbins if you can get him. I mean, he's out a couple months, but you call in somebody and you let them be the objective third wheel who can say the hard thing. Now, that is part of my job, and I always do so respectfully. I never, throat punch anybody, but I come in and I say, hey, this is what I see. And I've said this to a business owner one time. I've actually to 2 different business owners. Hey, after my evaluation, I see the problem. Okay, what is it, Todd? Where do we need to start? With you. You are the problem. What? Yes, you are the problem, and here's why you're the problem. And both times I was respectful, but I was honest and I was direct. Both times they appreciated it. Both times those people also contracted with me. And both times we made things a lot better in their companies. And that's what having an outside objective third party can do. This is not a sales pitch for Todd Hendricks. If it sounds like it, I apologize. But that objective third party can come in, can say the things that maybe you don't know how to say, can help you say the things that you need to say, and can also be the person who takes the proverbial bullets. I'm the objective third party. I'm going to go away at some point. So I'm going to say the hard things that may be hard to hear and that maybe nobody else wants to say, but need to be said. That can sometimes be incredibly empowering and powerful. Excuse me. So think about those things. What things can you say that you should say? Okay, write those down, then do those, execute those things. What are some things that maybe, you know what? Maybe you just can't say. I know, and I'm going to use an example that I think you all have. In your families, there are different types of relationships. And I was at my parents' house not too long ago, and I said something to my mom that she kind of smirked at me. I was kind of, teasing my mom a little bit, and she kind of smirked at me and said, "Oh, Todd, da 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 da," like moms do. And my dad was in the next room and he heard it. And he walked into the room and he said, "Todd, if I would have said that to your mother, she would have threw a pot across the kitchen and hit me in the head." Yep, I'm aware of that. That's why I said it, because I can say it and you can't. Now, we all have situations like that, but sometimes in business, that's the same thing. I have been in businesses where one, like maybe it's a husband-wife leadership team and they co-own the business, where the husband has a relationship with certain employees and the wife has a relationship with certain employees, and maybe the husband can say certain things and the wife can't, or vice versa. I have seen both play out equally. Lean into those things. Like, man, I really don't have a good relationship with Jim. I can't say that to him. He's going to take it bad. Okay, who can say that thing to Jim? Don't be limited by what you can do. Find a solution. What is the solution to the problem? Jim needs to hear he's doing bad on this account. If Todd says it, it's going to be a fight. But if Joe says it, he'll hear it from Joe. Okay, Joe, I need you to deliver this message. It has to be delivered. He needs to hear this and it has to get fixed. Okay, that's a solution. I just led my one of my training groups this morning, and we talked about finding a solution, not taking no for an answer. Find a way. Okay, if this needs to happen, find a way. Oh, you can't do it that way, Todd. Okay, what way can I do it? Well, you could do it this way. Okay, great. I'll do it this way. Oh, but you got to stop here. Okay. And then just keep adjusting and finding a way around to find the solution. And once you've found the solution, don't stop until it's been executed and it's solved. That's where a lot of us leaders get stuck. We find the solution. Okay, yep, I got the solution. I'm going to do it tomorrow, first thing tomorrow. And then tomorrow, what's today? Thursday. Tomorrow turns into Monday. Monday turns into Wednesday. Wednesday turns into next week, Thursday. And we don't execute. Done is better than perfect sometimes. Most times, I'm going to say. That's one of my favorite sayings. Done is better than perfect. Sometimes you just need to get it done because it doesn't need to be perfect. Now, do some things need to be perfect? Things we're delivering to our clients and our customers? Yes. Yep. We want to deliver the best thing we can. But sometimes getting it done and getting it going is better than waiting for perfection, because then you sit in it for another couple weeks. Also, last point, don't forget to use ongoing coaching. If you don't have ongoing coaching set up with your direct reports, I highly encourage you to set that up. I have a template that you can use for one-on-ones. I encourage you to do them weekly or bi-weekly, at least twice a month with every one of your direct reports, if your company structure allows that. I mean, I know some people are, managing teams of like 50. Yeah, your whole week would be meetings if you did it that way. But find a way to have some sort of one-on-one meeting at least twice a month with every one of your direct reports. And in that meeting, make sure you're giving them positive feedback about things they're doing well and adjusting feedback. Why do I say that? Because if you set a company culture of adjusting feedback, then that becomes part of your company culture. I know I'm using a word to say a word, but set the expectation everybody gets adjusting feedback. If that is just the culture within your business, within your organization and company, then adjusting feedback becomes so much easier to give, but it also becomes so much easier to receive as well. And then that makes you professionally agile and makes your direct reports professionally agile. And it makes everybody more receptive to feedback and able to pivot when they need to pivot. So a little bit of a rabbit trail talking about our toxic high performers, but we've got to rein them in if culture and climate in our companies is important to us. And I think it is. That's why you're here. That's why you're listening to this. That's why you're getting the replay, because it is important to you. If you didn't care about that and your dollar amount is the only thing you care about, hey, God bless you. Go forth and do that. That's not me. That's not how I lead. That's not how I train other people to lead. So I'll give a second. Anybody need to put anything in the chat? Go for it. If you want to pop on and say something, have comments, concerns, or adjusting feedback, I'm always open. If not, we're going to end it for today. I thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time today. This is important work. We as leaders, we're leaders not just at our jobs, our businesses, but with our families, with our extended families. Leadership is something that you have to do on a daily basis, but it is a skill that you can grow in and get better at. If you don't feel that you're a good leader, that doesn't mean you never will be a good leader. That just means it's something that you need to work on. So thank you all for joining me. I appreciate your time today. We will see you next week. Don't forget, look for the email on Monday for next week's topic. Let me see if I can give you a hint. Got my notes planned out here. Oh, chaos and clarity. That sounds interesting. All right. New topic comes out next week, Monday. Check your email. We will see you all next week. Thank you. I see that in the chat. Thank you. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you later.